Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Heat Wave. 32 teams in 32 days, and we are breaking down every single fantasy relevant player for each team in the upcoming season. We've reached our last division, baby. Oh, time flies from the start to the finish. 32 teams in 32 days. We're at day 28. I'm your host, the fantasy plug, Tim Petropolis, editor-in-chief of BrotoFantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Broto app. I am joined by my brother, the king of this fantasy thing and the lead fantasy analyst for Broto, Mr. Michael Petropolis. Hello, Mike.
Hello there, Tim.
And, of course, the Dynasty Don himself, the fantasy encyclopedia, the guy who can go for days on guys you've never even heard of, and lead writer over at Broto,
Ooh,
Mr.
that's what
Matt
she said.
Ward. Mr. Matt Ward, what's good, brother?
Sorry, I'm usually a little more professional in the intro. I couldn't handle that. That was hilarious. I can't talk about for guys that you've never heard of that sometimes won't even make an NFL team. Shout out Jared Dokes.
The fantasy encyclopedia, man. And finally, the genius of fantasy, Broto lead data analyst and the developer of the Fantasy Football by Broto app, Mr. Santiago Casanova.
Yo, what up?
By the way, a Steelers fan. And we are starting the NFC North with the Steelers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think I am on the low bias side when it comes to fantasy. And my favorite
That's what he
team.
says now.
Yeah, that's what
if you listen to the Saints episode, that is
I
not
practice
me.
what I preach. I practice what I preach, dog. Like
No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually
Yeah,
I try to hold a steady line with my fandom, not like these Jets boys here.
Hey.
What you talking about, Willis?
With that being
for values this year, man. He can't deny
the Jets are the. I mean, let's see.
So the same thing about New Orleans.
We'll see. Speaking of the app, download the Fantasy Football by Broto app today to get every single tool you need to become your own expert and dominate fantasy football. What you get in the app: fantasy player cards, fantasy player grades, a Broto exclusive, usage charts, a start-sit tool during the season, and a who to draft tool at this time of year. Player comps, consistency charts, game logs, coaching tendencies, articles, podcasts, rankings, waivers, and every single advanced stat that you could need, including exclusive stats like true throw value, true target value, true performance value, adjusted air yards, which I've been saying adjusted air yards this whole time. We renamed it to true air yards, and none of you guys have corrected me. True air yards, which we're going to talk about today, and of course, true matchup rankings. The app is free because of our patrons over at patreon.com/BrotoFantasy. Thank you to our patrons. You keep the lights running, and you are the greatest human beings alive.
And the best ball guide.
Hold on, we're not here yet.
Yeah, okay.
We're not at the end yet. I haven't even said what they get.
You were gonna forget again.
For as little as $3 a month, an extra waiver wire show every week, proven DFS cash game optimizers, access to cheat sheets, private team consultations, the best ball guide by the #1 best ball expert in the
Dundies
world last year. Michael, a free perk for the patrons and available for purchase for anyone at BrotoFantasy.com. And the most unique league in the world, the Unlimited League that is all flexi. You don't even know how many people are going to be in league. It is unlimited and it is about to go down, and we are going to be talking about it on our podcast, Unlimited. Just like Russell Women.
Unlimited.
So if you want to be in a league where you literally have your own private sports center for that league every week, come join. We're going to be doing that. It's going to be amazing.
Bro, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Let's jump into the show. Mike Tomlin returns for season number 15 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, returns for year 2. Very interesting to see how the system evolves after Big Ben. Matt Canada could also be the nickname of Matt Ward.
I was about to say, bro.
Last year, they were 21st in points per game. They passed 62% of the time, which was the 3rd highest pass volume in the NFL. Their PFF online ranking coming into the year, an ugly 30th. Additions, the big one, QB Mitch Trubisky. I don't know how we decided that you're going to let me talk about Mitch Trubisky and Sam Darnold in back-to-back episodes, but here we are. Center Mason Cole. Rookies that they brought in: Kenny Pickett in the 1st, George Pickens in the 2nd, and wide receiver Calvin Austin in the 4th. And the subtractions, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington. So let's get into the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett did look good in his first preseason game as of this taping. That is all we have on the information on Kenny Pickett. But it seems as though Mitch Trubisky still has the edge when it comes to fantasy when it comes to the fantasy starting, fantasy reality, all of it. He's starting, it looks like. Now, I will say this. Mitch Trubisky, when I got on board the Mitch train, had an extremely effective year in 2018 where he was 6th in carries. He rushed the ball like crazy, and it gave him enough to be a quarterback 1 on the season, and he won me a lot of weeks that year. That was when I kind of fell in love with Mitch. What happened though is that he stopped running. He became more of a pocket passer, and that was not the best move for him.
He's not very good
at.
He
is not, right. So he's not a pocket passer, but he's almost more accurate on the run than he is in the pocket. But with that being said, one thing that Mike Tomlin stressed about the quarterback position is that they wanted to get more mobility in the quarterback position, which Mitch Trubisky brings. So with that being said, let's get into the quarterback. Mike, talk about Trubisky, talk about Pickett. How do you think this plays out for them this season?
Look, Mitchell Trubisky, it's like, I don't know why this happens. It's like people have very short memories. Like he backed up Josh Allen last season, and it was like just progressively people thinking like, oh, Mitch Trubisky's pretty good again, because he was backing up Josh Allen, as if that means absolutely anything. It's not like he played well last season. It was just that he backed up Josh Allen. MVP, right?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, the Nickelodeon shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't deny his awards.
I mean,
that's true.
He has more than anybody.
You know what? Just scratch all that. We could edit that out. He's the best. But honestly, look,
how many times has your quarterback been slimed?
That's true. You're right.
Exactly.
Well, never mind.
Look, Mitchell Trubisky, just out of nowhere, like people thought he could be a starting quarterback again because he sat for a year. It's just silly. His career high in passing yards is less than 3,300. He had a 24 touchdown season in 2018, the season where he was actually decent. Other than that, he's never thrown for more than 17 touchdowns. Like Tim said, he's not really a pocket passer guy. Ben Roethlisberger last season was 28th in true throw value. I don't expect anything better out of the Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett combo. It seems like Mitch Trubisky is going to start this season, but Kenny Pickett did have a very good preseason game, so maybe he forces his way, similar to how Russell Wilson forced his hand when they signed Matt Flynn to that big contract. You never know. But either way, I'm not really interested in these guys from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go into the fantasy season with, Mitch Trubisky at the helm, even if you're in a super flex. Like it's hard to justify him being in the top 24-year quarterbacks. But there is a world where Mitch Trubisky has some success, and if he's gonna have that success, it's gonna be his wide receivers is gonna bring him that success. So let's talk about the wide receivers. It's a group that is kind of having a wrench thrown in it, because as of right now, George Pickens seems to be everyone's favorite Hall of Fame candidate. I mean, he's been great at practice. He made some great plays in the preseason. He's been good. That on top of the fact that Deontay Johnson just got a contract, and all of a sudden Chase Claypool truthers are really looking behind their backs on what is going on in Pittsburgh. So how do we feel about these three guys? You assume, Michael said that there's no way that the true throw value is going to be higher. I assume that Mitch Trubisky is going to have a higher true throw value than 28th. That's just my assumption.
Of course.
Why? Why is that the assumption?
Because he's better than the ghost of Big Ben.
Glad you asked.
Let's go, Cass.
Glad you asked, Mike.
Cass has been chomping at the bits.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen Cass make that many facial expressions.
I wouldn't have you with the face.
He was so Cass. The floor is yours.
No, real quick.
No,
Cass goes, I'm not biased, but now he's about to get hyped about Mitch Trubisky. Get out of here.
But I'm gonna back it up, dog.
Oh, let's get it. Oh,
I'm gonna take a sip of my tea. I'm gonna take a sip of my tea, and then I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna disgust some viewers.
Live every day like it's pretzel day, baby.
Bro, Michael, you are getting Kermited currently.
This is the
just peep this, son.
Live action Kermiting.
Last time we saw Trubisky, full-ish season with the Bears, with fucking Nick Foles being his competition in Matt Nagy's system, he had a true throw value of 0.538. Last year, Ben had a 0.419. Bro, that's more than 0.1 difference. Just for reference, that year, Trubisky only had one game under Big Ben's average last season. Last season, Big Ben was a hull of himself. He was a ghost. He should have retired 3 years ago. Trubisky may
Facts.
not be a good quarterback, but he cannot be worse than that. Like, he can throw the ball further than 7 yards downfield, and he's at least, like, if they're gonna use him in a mobile role, which I think the Steelers are smart enough to do what Matt Nagy didn't, and like we've seen, he can be better than Ben Roethlisberger was last year. This is suddenly not looking so bad for the Steelers. I don't think. I'm not excited about Mitch Trubisky for fantasy. I will say, not even excited about the wide receivers per se. Like, I think they're being drafted fairly. However, riddle me this: if Claypool had an 18.3% target share, which we've established in previous episodes that is respectable, and he finished with 45 in points per game last season, and as I've just laid down, got a QB upgrade, why is he being drafted as wide receiver 47 right now? I know Pickens is there, but Pickens, why is that? You know?
I love the hand motions you're making right now.
But I think he's almost starting to be a value right now. You know, like top 3, like a wide receiver 3 finish is a big possibility. I think like top 36 wide receivers, and being drafted wide receiver 47 right now smells like value, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that it's not a little bit of a value if it works out. It's just hard to, I don't know, man. It's hard. What about Deontay? What about George Pickens? How you
Deontay, I think he's smelling wide receiver 15, 16, 14, and that's where he's being drafted. So that's why I'm not mad at it. I'm not targeting him like actively, but that's where he's being drafted, and I'm very okay with that. I'll draft him.
You mentioned you were up on the fact that Mitch Trubisky is not going to be the type of guy who's going to dump off, like take 3-step drops and dump it off. That's basically Deontay Johnson's game. Are you concerned that he is less involved?
It's not going to be completely removed, right? Like, that's still a big part of the offense, and it's going to be the safe stuff. And Juju's gone, right? So that's it's a whole different dynamic, I think, in the wide receiver room. And I don't think he was being hyper targeted. Well, no, he was being hyper targeted because of Ben's noodle arm, but I think those targets are going to be more effective now. So even though, like, if you lose some, they're going to be better. That's how I draw the balance there.
And finally, I think, oh, good.
Oh, so yeah, like Pickens, I think he's going to be a very good player, but he's still a rookie. We've been accustomed by freak rookies going into the NFL, like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and just being absolutely elite from the start. That's not the norm. Like, we can expect Pickens to start slower, and the Claypool and Deontay Johnson running the show for a little bit, and that's what I'm banking on for a higher finish.
To give a word of caution to Pickens too, like, you guys remember Terrace Marshall from the Panthers? He had this exact same level of hype. He dominated preseason. He dominated training camp. He was beating everybody. And then he peaked up to being drafted as like the wide receiver, 45, right around
even earlier. I remember like
Labor
Day weekend.
Even earlier, right? And finishes the wide receiver 78 in points per game. So that's like rookie's faceplant. Rookie's faceplant. So
JJ
like paper expectations. A lot of rookies have this level of hype. George Pickens, and George Pickens is a great prospect. There's no denying that. He had the highest market share of his freshman receiving yards on his team in Georgia at 17 years old. So like the kid can ball, but he's also a rookie. So taper expectations.
I will say this though, just because now we've had 2 disparaging George Pickens takes, I'm going to say one thing for the positive George Pickens take. The difference between those receivers and George Pickens is that George Pickens is on the Steelers. And I think that there's something to be said about the Steelers' ability to develop these guys.
Yep.
And
absolutely. I actually like that narrative, Tim. Yeah.
The Steelers beat has said that out of all the guys that have been in this camp, and you're talking about guys like Antonio Brown, Plexico Burris, Hines Ward, Santonio Holmes, Juju Smith-Schuster, the list goes on and on. Like, I'm not even saying half these dudes. the beat report is that he's had the most success right off the bat, right away, in terms of being dominating every practice. So, I mean, if it wasn't for a torn ACL, George Pickens would have probably been a first-round pick. And when you think about how he dominated college, there is something to be said about, hey, if there are outlier situations on these rookie wide receivers, George Pickens might be that guy. Now, one of the things that will help you pick these great wide receivers that gives you an incredible edge is true air yards. So, Cass, why don't you take us through the Fantasy Football by Broto tip of the day? You can download the app right now and take us through these true air yards, or AKA adjusted air yards, that shows the true value of air yards.
Of course. So, like, we know air yards are some analysts' favorite stat, and we also know they're not very good on their own. So what we did is to try to avoid, like Hail Marys and a 70 air yard pass gets credited to a speedy wide receiver, but he had no chance of catching that. So what we do is take the chance of completion of the pass and multiply that by the air yards. So now we get the true air yards, and as you can see, it's quite good for predicting success. Like, the top players in true air yards are Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Mark Andrews, Devontae Adams. The list goes on.
The leaderboard test, it checks out.
Oh yeah, of course, easy. And like, you can see some candidates for maybe better performances next year, right? So these are actually candidates for positive regression, as it's sometimes called, because they had the true air yards. They just didn't get them to get, like, they didn't realize them, and that's where the next session comes in: unrealized and realized true air yards, right? So guys like Mooney had 388 unrealized air yards, almost the same as Justin Jefferson. But when you look at the total, like, they had almost over 200 difference. So this is a way you can check, like, the conversion rates and stuff, and see who's poised for a bigger breakout in the future.
Oh man, what an excellent tool! What an excellent tool! That's just like obvious. It's like, so it seems so obvious because Cass makes it seem so obvious, but it's not. It's complicated. With that being said, let's get into something that's not complicated. Najee Harris is going to get a lot of touches, and the complicated question is, how efficient will he be with those touches? Michael, you tweeted something that was really interesting the other day. In my opinion, you said, "Are we sure that Najee Harris isn't like Trent Richardson again?" Now, you're talking about these guys kind of have the same running style. They kind of have the same athletic profile in college. They went to the same college. With that being said, Trent Richardson had a very voluminous but unsuccessful in terms of volume rookie season. Najee Harris did the same, but not at the level that Trent Richardson had. Najee Harris had a significantly better rookie season.
But he didn't, though. He just had ridiculous volume. Trent Richardson had a very average rookie season. He was fed the ball a ton because he was a rookie and a top 5 draft pick and all that. He didn't see as many touches as Najee Harris, though. Najee Harris had 307 rush attempts and 94 targets. That's absolutely absurd volume. 400 plus opportunities for a rookie. So not surprising that he ended as the RB4, but he also ended as the RB8 in points per game. The issue I have with Harris, he had a yards per carry under 4. And I know people don't like to talk about yards per carry anymore, but if you have a yards per carry under 4, generally you're not that good. Like, I know it's like a dinosaur type stat to some advanced stat people these days. Still, under 4 yards per carry is just not good, period. 51st in points per opportunity, excluding touchdowns. Had a negative 100 rushing yards over expected on the season. He was also 60th in yards per reception. This guy saw 94 targets. 94. And he totaled 467 receiving yards. That's like one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard in my life. Can we just think about the fact that he had 467 yards on 94 targets?
I'll do you one better to speak of his rushing. Najee Harris is the only running back in the last decade that has finished with over 350 touches and a negative rushing yards over expected.
Damn, son.
That's ridiculous. Like that's one of the when I was looking it up to like go as I was like, Cass, how far back does your database go? And he was like to 2012, and I was like, well, then at least a decade. Like it's one of the craziest stats I've ever seen.
Yeah, and now Harris is being treated as this no-brainer, super safe first-round pick. What's
Nah.
safe about a mediocre football player in the first round? He's being drafted as the RB5 right now when he was the RB8 in points per game, seeing 400 touches. Are we sure he's going to get 400-plus opportunities again? I'd bet heavily against it. Like
Not if you believe that all of the other options on the Steelers are actually good.
Which they are. I'm
Exactly.
completely fading Najee Harris. I have zero interest in Najee Harris as my first round pick. Anyone who thinks he's like a safe pick just because he's guaranteed volume. If you want players who are guaranteed volume, draft Dalvin Cook, like draft Joe Mixon. Like these players weren't, and I'm not even a Joe Mixon guy. These players weren't complete trash last season. Najee Harris
Joe Mixon
was trash.
was just barely above the trash that Najee Harris was.
No, he wasn't. Joe Mixon.
Yes, he was, bro. He was inefficient again.
He was more efficient than seasons past. He's also on the best offense in the league, arguably. But whatever. I'm talking about Najee Harris here. There's a 0% chance I draft Najee Harris as my first pick this season. So I'm going to be rostering Najee Harris 0% of the time.
I tend to agree, to be honest. I just count me out again, like Michael said, on mediocre dudes.
Yeah. It's not even like you're trying to hate on it because he did what he was supposed to. Actually, he didn't even really do what he was supposed to with that volume, but he handled the volume. Let's put it that way. He handled the volume that was given to him. So like, I guess that defines a workhorse role, which is what people want. But man, like, I just don't see it. Like,
How do you sit there at your computer, like put money into fantasy football and draft Najee Harris over Dalvin Cook?
I think here's why. It's because you are banking on the fact that there could be a second-year jump. You're banking on the fact that he's going to get better. And look, Najee Harris in his college career had a very successful college career. He was drafted in the first round. He has first-round capital. It's not out of the question that he improves in year 2. What are his comps looking like after you put in his rookie stats? They must be very good.
Glad you asked. I do have them pulled up right here. He got Matt Forte, number 1. You might have heard of him. Saquon Barkley. But then you get TJ Yeldon. Then Leonard Fournette. And then Jordan Howard. So, you got that risk baked into it, but usually very positive.
I would say that right now you have a 4 out of 5 chance that he becomes a top 12 running back. With that being said, he's being drafted at his ceiling, and I have no interest in drafting him in the first round. If he was going in the second round, then we could talk. But I agree. I think that he's being drafted at his ceiling. Anything else about these running backs before we get into tight ends?
Nope.
All right, Pat Freiermuth. The Muth. He is definitely someone that I am trying to target late in drafts. I've been able to get him late. Although volume is a concern, I think when you're looking at the quarterback situation, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, these are guys who are going to be looking for outlets for dump offs. And if that's not Najee Harris, if he's less efficient again, then that opens up some space for Freiermuth. But the problem is with Freiermuth, like, you're probably going to be disappointed if he doesn't catch a touchdown. He's going to be involved in the offense, but he's not going to be the main guy. He's the 4th or 5th option at best in the passing offense. So he has upside, but it's capped in my opinion. With that being said, I like him where he's going at ADP. How are you feeling about Mr. Freiermuth, Mike?
Well, I'm not the tight end guy this episode, Tim.
Oh, you're not. I'm sorry. Who's the tight end?
I mean, guy? I can talk. I'll take it from here, Mike. Thanks, though.
Yeah, no problem.
I've really liked Pat Freiermuth throughout his entire collegiate career. I scout a lot of college prospects for fantasy purposes, dynasty specifically. And I've always really liked Pat, and I kind of liked the fact that you could get him a lot cheaper than it was supposed to be assumed once Pitts had that ridiculous senior breakout while playing wide receiver. But it's going to be really tough for Freiermuth to see volume I think. He had 79 targets last season, 60 receptions, 497 yards, 7 touchdowns, which is actually a really, really good rookie tight end season. Like
exceptionally good.
Exceptionally good. And which, gives you even more confidence when you had that high grade on him coming in. Which everybody did. But it's just, like you said, that's probably the 4th pass catching option at best. I would say it would go Deontay, Chase Claypool, Najee, Pickens mixed in, but right now Freiermuth over Pickens in my opinion. But man, like he was first in red zone targets last season. He's what you want from a tight end. Like he's going to score touchdowns and he's going to see probably 75 targets. So at tight end 12 off like 142 overall, like I'm not super mad at that, but I think that's probably what you're going to get. I don't think he's going to surpass those guys like Goddard and Gesicki that have a bit of higher ceilings than he does when they see and can get 10 target games. So you're going to get a low end tight end 1 finish overall, but probably a little bit below that in points per game.
Yeah, I mean, we rarely see rookie tight ends make an impact. I think people are downgrading the fact that Pat Freiermuth had a great rookie season.
I actually I like Pat. I would need to preface that. Like I like Pat Freiermuth, and I think he's going to be a phenomenal football player. But it's also just his 2nd season, and a continuation of rookie success like that, unless it's like Kyle Pitts level, like Evan Ingram level, and I guess Evan Ingram didn't even really continue it, right? So he didn't have quite that first year tight end breakout. He just had a very, very good one, a rare one, but not like an elite, like once in a generation kind of rookie tight end breakout. So you could probably expect roughly the same thing. And that was tight end 15 in points per game.
All right, y'all. Let's get into the bold predictions. I'm here. Mitch Trubisky, top 24 quarterback, establishes himself and starts the entire season.
All right.
I agree with that.
Cass.
I don't think Pickett's going to start a single game. Oh,
Huh.
there. Well, I guess I dropped my bold prediction earlier.
There you go, Matt. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think Pickett's going to start a single game.
Wow, interesting. Cass, you're up.
I'm gonna keep it tame. Not to sound too much like a homer, but I'm thinking Claypool is comfortably a wide receiver 3 or better.
Oh, that's pretty hot considering where he's going. Michael, where you at?
I would say Najee Harris is outside the RB1.
Michael always giving me shit about being
bro. That's not the
outside.
hottest. Like I get it.
Right,
Basically
outside the top 15. He's going as RB.
Yeah. I'll take that.
Right now,
I'll take that.
He's being drafted in the first
round.
That's
spicy. Yeah. That was spicy. The first one was
I'll
spicy enough. I'll write that one down.
Look at me, I'm Michael. I make my hot takes.
I'm Tim. I love Sam Darnold and Mitch Trubisky.
Damn. Cook
what,
you.
What is that damn? Why did he cook me? I stand by my men.
Mike, spitting right now.
Michael, where can they find you?
I mean, at BRoto FF Mike, it's right there.
Cass,
it's right there.
BRoto FF Casanova, son.
And Matt, hold on. I'm gonna get these. I'm gonna get this banner off. Hold on. I'm gonna get it off.
You already
I'm
know.
gonna get it off. Okay.
What do you even?
Right,
at Psychword FF.
There you go. Gotcha.
Yeah.
At BRoto FF Tim. Cass.
Fire.
Cass, where can they find you?
He already said it, bro. Come on now.
FF Casanova, FF by BRoto, at BRotoFantasy.com, BRoto Fantasy on Twitter.
At BRoto Jason.
BRoto FFJ.
We'll see you tomorrow with the Bengals.
Yep.
Later.
See ya.